Hi, it's Kathy with City Farmhouse Studio. I'd love to share with you how to make this beautiful wingspan shawl with some simple hand transfer patterning that looks way more complicated than it is. You can create one of your very own. The link to the pattern can be found in the description below. Hey, it's Kathy. Down below you'll see a new storefront with all kinds of new designs, like this t-shirt, for knitters, crocheters, and crafters. It's another way you can support me and my family, which I truly appreciate. Thanks. For the yarn, I used Baby Bee Sweet Delight. The colorway is Give Me the Moon. It is a 4-ounce skein, 377 yards. So that translates to 115 grams, 345 meters. It is a 60% acrylic, 40% polyamide. This yarn is a category 3, and I did get 13 wraps per inch. And I am using an LK150 mid-gauge machine. Also, for reference, my mast tension is set to 5, and my carriage is set to 6. Now, of course, that is for the gauge on my machine. Even other LK150s, you may need to get something different to make it work for yours. To begin, you will notice in the pattern it is a very short written description of how to create this, and that is because most of it is based on a chart. You will have pattern A, which is how to make these diamond motifs, going into the pearl rows, the eyelets, and then the few more pearls up at the top. Pattern B is the lace motif that constructs most of the shawl pattern. So the detail of pattern A and pattern B are just the repeat section. Pattern A is 12 stitches, pattern B is 24. Below that, you will see the chart for the full entirety of the center panel, and you can see that every 2 rows we're decreasing 1 needle in on both sides. If you continue down, you will see a close-up of those decreases on the right and the left, and then below that, you see, as we get more to the top, how to create all of that stuff up at the top. Below that are more the details of the pattern for the right and the left side, because you're decreasing at different rates on the right and the left, but we'll get into that more later on. So let's first start with the center panel. You will notice that on the right side you do have 1 stitch more than on your left side of the bed that you're casting on. I'm doing a shortened condensed version here just for my time. You will also, and that is because the pattern all comes into 1 stitch in the center, but we need to offset for making sure that the diamonds look equal on both sides. So that is why there is 1 more on 1 side. It is not a typo. So to begin, let's start with E-wrapping all the needles that are to be in work. For this pattern, I did not start with waste yarn or ravel cord because I was able to complete it and move all the needles as needed without it. But if you feel more comfortable and confident with having it all done, casted on, and all of that weight set up, needles working, by all means, go ahead and start with waste yarn and ravel cord. All right, so everything's hooked up. Push the wraps behind the latches of the needles. And now I will knit 2 rows, but after the first one, I will put on my cast on comb. Okay, so again, if you look at the pattern overall, you'll see that both stitches on the edge need to move in. And I want to make sure those now empty needles are pushed out of work. And everything on this side. The left one will become my center stitch. I'm going to start in the center, and that's to make sure I get everything laid out and all of the stitches lined up correct. But the pattern looks complicated. It's just a decreasing, moving stitches in towards this center stitch for over those 12 needles. So I want to take the 5 stitches on each side and move them. If they're on the left side of the needle, they want to move to the right. If they're the 5 on the right side of the needle, they need to move left. So I'm going to take the 3, because I only have a 3 and a 2 transfer tool. I'm going to do the 3 on the right and then the 3 on the left and move them in towards that center needle. So now that center 1 on the left side of the bed now has 3 stitches on it. And then I'm going to move the 2 next to it. So now we have the 5 needles on each side moving in towards that center. These needles that are now open, I'm going to leave in work. I want to skip 1 stitch. Go on this side of the bed so you can see better. I'm going to skip 1 stitch, and then these 5 need to move to this stitch, and these 5 need to move in. So we'll repeat those moves. And then moving the 2 to complete the 5. And then repeat that on this side. So again, we have the open stitch needle, we skip 1, and then these 5 move to this stitch. You can see I am not too concerned with whether the right or the left side moves first. I'm more concerned that all the stitches are moved in the right position, because we have that center column that will always lay in front. It really doesn't matter if the left moves first or the right moves first. So then skip the open, the 1 left in work, and then these 5 need to move to this stitch. So here you can see on both ends where we have the decreased stitches on the edge, you have 1 open needle left in work, and then you start your diamonds. So that's how that 1 odd number comes into play. Make sure all of those will knit, and then you knit 2 rows. Okay. So now it's a very similar process, but instead of 5 moving in to where that center needle is, we just need 4. So now you can start seeing the stitch that has the center double decrease where those up 2 lay. And you can just move the 4 stitches into the center to lay on that. Here's my other one. Move those 4. Helps when you don't push your needles, pull your needle out too far where the stitches fall past the latch. Sometimes that's the hardest part of this pattern. All right. Now again, I want to decrease my edge stitches. Make sure those are out of work. And then transfer the 4. Okay. So now once you have everything transferred, you can see all those open needles are still in work. But where previously we only had the 1 stitch that we skipped over, we have the 3. And we want to transfer that center stitch into a purl. So we just go into the stitch below, drop it, go into the stitch below, drop it, and then work that stitch as a purl stitch. Okay. And then since this only has the 1 stitch on the side, we do not transfer anything on the edges. So once everything's been transferred to the purls, we have all of our needles moved in, go ahead and knit 2 rows. Okay. So where before we had 4 stitches moving in, we will just have the 3. So I am back to just the 3 prong. I can see where the double stitches are. So I know those 3 just need to move onto that needle. This row is where the moves start really going quick because you don't have to do doubles, but we're going to have more purls. So that's where the time comes in. Now, as you can see, none of this is any too complicated, as long as you just kind of break it into the pattern sections and make sure you get each chunk right. Okay, so I have not moved my decreased stitches in for the edges. I'll make sure that is. And then now we are keeping the stitches that had the eyelets, and we want to transfer the center 3 to be purl stitches. So this pattern does take a little more time than some of the knit sweaters because there is a lot of hand transferring, but it's a great way to have an excuse to spend more time at your machine, right? Also, you don't go through as much yarn as fast, so it's a money saver. So look at the positives, and you get a beautiful shawl at the end. All right, so all the 3 are transferred. All my needles are still in work. My edge decreases are done. Everything looks good, so I'm going to knit 2 rows. All right. So where that was 3 moving, now we're down to 2 moving in. So you can see how the diamond patterns are starting to come. And then as you block it, just how the stitches lay and pull, that's how you get the shaped edge. Kind of magic. Looks way more complicated than it is. There's no short rows or anything like that. Get my edge decreases. Make sure those are out of work. And then we need to transfer the center. So where we had 3 last time, we're going to have 5. All right, so we have our decreases. The needles are moved all towards the center. We have our pearls all complete. The needles in work to be in work are in work, and out of work are out of work. So we knit 2 rows. All right, so now we're down to 1 needle moving in. Move our edge stitches. Make sure I get those out of work and in work. And then you got it. These center stitches for the purl section. So we've gotten our singles transferred. We have the 7 stitches transferred to purls. Our edge stitches are decreased. Everything looks correct, so we'll knit the 2 rows. So that is our final transferring to the center stitches, but we need to do rows of purl now before we get into the eyelets. In this section, we'll just be moving our in stitches in, so continuing that decrease, but transferring this stitch to be a purl above the eyelet gets a little tricky. So all we're going to do is transfer 9 and continue that pattern of stitches where the eyelets would kind of create a boundary. So those 9 stitches we will transfer. And then we'll skip 3 stitches and then transfer 9 stitches more. So this pattern is just building off the pattern we've already kind of set over the previous rows of those increasing purls. 2 stitches becoming adding to the purls each even row. Skip 3 and transfer 9. So again, once you have edge stitches transferred, the 9s to the purls. What's in work is in work, the needles out of work are out of work. Knit 2 rows. Again, for this row, we're going to decrease. Here on out, just nothing new. Decrease 1 stitch. Now this whole entire row we will transfer to purls. And quite honestly, This is what takes the longest, these full purl rows out of all the pattern, if you ask me. Because you just kind of sit there and go down the line. Having a podcast, an audiobook really does make these go quicker. All right, so then once edges are decreased, all the needles are transferred to purl, knit 2 rows. So once you have completed that full row of purl, we are to the eyelet section of pattern A. We'll go ahead and decrease our 2 end stitches. But all this pattern is taking 1 needle. So I have the stitch decreased. I'm going to the very next needle, lifting that stitch and moving it to the left. Go to the next needle, move it 1 stitch to the left. And continue that all the way down the line. Now where the transferring seemed to take forever, these rows seem to go really quick. All right, and then you will end with taking the second to the last needle and putting it onto the far left needle. So this needle does have 3 stitches. Make sure all of those in the center are in work and everything else is out. You knit 2 rows. And we do that again. So again, push your decreases. And then starting, here's our decrease stitch with 2 stitches already on it. Go to the next needle, take that off and move it 1 stitch to the left. So it is the alternating between what you moved the previous row. So here you can see where I had a needle moved onto it. Now it is the one that is being moved. When you get to the end of the row, it will be just as before, where the edge stitch now has 3 stitches in work on it. Make sure all of those are in work. The needles to be out of work are out of work. And we knit 2 rows. All right, once more, decreases. After the 3 rows of eyelets, again, decrease 1 stitch. In this row, because we have those eyelets that would be hard to transfer to purls, go ahead and knit 2 more rows. You will decrease again. And this is where you will transfer the entire row to purls. Once all is purled, again knit 2 rows and repeat that the edge decreases. And transferring to pearls once more. All right, so once edge stitches are done, pearls are to pearls, everything's in work that needs to be worked. Not in work, you do a little happy dance because that's the last of the purl rows, and you knit 2 rows. Okay, so now we are ready to begin pattern B. And LK150 is not a punch card. It does not have electronic patterning. You can buy one of those little, it's a little bug that runs over that would select patterns that you program in. However, I found another little cheat way to create my own patterning template. And what I did was I cut cardboard, just, that's an Amazon box, to the strip of the length. So if I have 24 needles, it goes from the outside edge of stitch 1 to the outside edge of stitch 24. I even drew the red lines so I can line those up between the first and the second needle to make sure I'm really centered where it needs to be. And then I went ahead and put some tape on it to make it kind of like a whiteboard. And I used, they're not dry erase markers, they're the ones that you need water to clear them off. And I used a red that is now faded to orange and a green. I've labeled which pattern number. And in the pattern section, you can see where it tells you the numbers that you need to pull out. And I pulled those stitches out. And the ones that need to move to the left, I've marked those lines behind the center of the needles. It's not straight on, so I don't think you can see exactly. But I marked those, and the ones that need to move to the left, I marked a different color. So I have each 6 of those all marked with the needles needing to be selected. So that is kind of how I created my own pattern template. So for the first row of the patterning, you will need your 3 and your 2 prong, and I just line those up and then selecting the needles that correspond and moving them into the coordinating direction. So since I have decreased enough to where you cannot see a full repeat, I'm going to recast and knit a few rows so you can see more of the patterning for a fuller scale. But already you can see the diamonds taking shape, the eyelets, and the purl rows. And it's even prettier on the right side. So I'll be using my little flashcards here for moving all the needles. However, this pattern is based off of a Toyota lace punch card. It is number 20. The pattern does look like this. It is where sections of the lace, you transfer 1 stitch and you have to just move the lace carriage back and forth a number of rows to get all these stitches moved to the correct position. And then you knit 2 rows and then just moving the lace carriage, moving the needles back and forth, knit 2 rows. If you have a punch card or electronic patterning, go ahead and use it. If you do not have this punch card and you have another lace pattern that you prefer, go ahead and use it. This is a 24 needle stitch pattern repeat. You most definitely can use it. The main thing to remember is just keeping these edge stitches moving in every other row. And then also I did, if there was an open knit lace, the one stitch in, that was fine. However, if after we moved in, it just had one random opening and that was it for a while, I did take those out. Nothing wrong with leaving them in, but that was my preference. That's how I wrote the pattern, but it is up to you to do as you wish. It'll work out. But for non-patterning machines, I have gone ahead and E-wrapped cast on knit 2 rows of just plain stockinette to give me a larger width so that I can show you more of these 24 stitch pattern repeats like you see in the pattern. So pretend what we did before went further down. So again, I showed you how I set up my little sample cards, and you will need for most of the rows a 3 and a 2, and on the last 6th row of repeat, 6th row of the patterning, you will need a 1 and a 3. So again, let's go ahead and move in our edge needles. And where before it really didn't matter for those triangles whether we moved left or right, these patterns it does, hence why I have my 2 different sets of arrows. You see the orange arrow moving to the left, excuse me, to the right, the green moving to the left. So I will just, starting at 0, set up mine, and then I select the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, moving those in, the 8th and 9th, moving those in, and then same with these sets of needles. Now moving out, I know it's a 24 stitch pattern, so I am lining this edge of my cardboard to my 25th needle and making sure my red line to orientate it is between the 2 needles. And again, I move the stitches. Now, if you look for the next pattern, my 2 that need to be moved, the very left one is the one with the double, so I'm not going to do it. I'm going to leave that as is and then move to the left side of the bed. You will need to repeat this you will need to repeat the full card and then be just doing the section of what I am doing of 2. So according to the pattern, the 2 edge stitches would move out to the left again, but I'd have a random stitch that I don't want, and I also want it mirroring this side, so I'm going to leave that be. So once I have everything transferred, I just double check, make sure everything looks correct, and then knit 2 rows. And again, move my edge stitches in. And this pattern row 2, which would be essentially 4, since we have the 1 blank row of knitting, it is identical to the previous row with the patterning. So again, I line up the 0 to my edge, and I transfer set stitches. And I just kind of double check that what I'm doing lines up with the previous row to make sure I'm doing the same and that I did the same, because it's way easier to correct now than later. My next patterning was off of what needles were in work, So I just moved to the left side of the bed, and you continue doing that, lining up every 24 stitches. Now this one has the edge for the very far left of the bed. This edge stitch would move to the left, but we are outside of that for working needles, so I leave that as is. Double check everything and knit 2 rows. So number 3, now you'll see 3 and 6 have a star, and that is for the left and the right side, and I'll explain that later. But again, lining up the edge with my 0 needle, my center, my first needle. And I move these. And this is why it becomes so important to have your left and your right marked, because they're moving different directions than what this eyelets form, the pattern, and I get super confused on it. So there I just dropped a stitch, just picking it up and hanging it back on. Luckily it did not come unworked. So I have completed that, so I'm going to move to line it up with the 25th needle. And again, this last stitch is out of work, so I skip over it. And I did not decrease my edge stitches, so I'm going to do that. And again, this one would be moving it out of work, so I leave that as is. All right, so I've decreased my edge stitches, I've transferred everything, I knit 2 rows. So for the 4th section of the repeat, transfer the needles and lining up with 0 for the center of the bed. I'm going to repeat the transfers. In the correct position. Line up with 24, 25. Again, the second part of those transfers are out of the needles, so I just move back to this side of the bed. And again, this needle that needs to move to the left would be out of work, so I ignore that. So now everything again looks correct, and I knit 2 rows. So you can see how we're making the pattern. It's just moving these eyelets, but the direction that the stitches move. So this one, you'd think it would move to the left, but in reality it's going to the right. Just kind of get you a little off of what stitch is going where. And then sometimes you pick up on the outside of the eyelets, and sometimes you pick up with the eyelet and just kind of second guess yourself. So I'm decreasing my edge stitches. And then we finish on this side. Again, this would be out of work, so ignore it. Knit 2 rows. Now on the 6th row of patterning, we only have the 3 and the 1, so I'm switching to the 3 and single prong transfer tool. Get my edges in. And then we'll work what is called. So it's actually the same eyelet of needle above the eyelet for one of them, but then the others for the 3 are moving in. Go to the next section and then this one we just have the 1 moving in. Again, everything is moved. Pattern looks correct with where the eyelets are moving in the direction. And we knit 2 rows. And we have gone through all 6 patterns. So now we'll start over with number 1. And we continue this until we have only 1 stitch. And then you bind off, and then you proceed to the left and the right panel. Now I do want to show you this row because it does show you how the stitches with the repeat line up. So there you can start to see where it's starting to pull up and we're getting that wingspan effect of the pattern. And that is how you're going to continue going for your center. Now for your left and the right panel, you're going to begin very much similar, but the edge stitches for the outside edge and for where you seam it to the center panel are slightly different. So for the pattern A, so on this edge stitch, which is going to be the outside edge, we again are decreasing every other row, 1 stitch. However, we don't have that eyelet just to get a nice clean edge finish. On the side where it meets your center panel, we only decrease every 6 rows. So pay attention to your patterning, that detail to get that. And that's because we have a more straight edge and not as angled in. Now once you get to this section, on one side, whatever's going to be seamed to the center, you continue decreasing every 6 rows. That is why I have the stars on the 3 in the 6th pattern, because it is on those pattern repeat rows that slower decrease moves in. For this section of patterning, you decrease every row. So we will move, we just did a 1, so we transfer our second rows. We'd move the stitches exactly as the same. Okay, so I'm moving the stitches just as before, what's called. Now I am working off of the left panel, and it's this side that will not be decreasing as often, but now I'm going to decrease on the right side, knit 1 row, decrease again, and knit row. So 1, 2, 4, and 5 will proceed just as that. 3 and 6, we go ahead and transfer just as before. And this right side we're going to decrease. On the left side we transfer. And because it is a 3 row, it decreases. Knit 1 row, decrease again on the right side, and knit 1 row. So you continue this patterning as before, the 1 through 4. On the left panel, the right side of the bed decreases every row. The left side of the bed decreases once every 6 rows. So again, the 3rd and 6th pattern. So decrease that edge stitch. I am not on a 3 or a 6, so I'm not going to decrease the left side. Knit, decrease and knit. All right, so you continue that, and you can already start to see how this side is really starting to pull in, and this side is not, just over those few rows that we've done. And that helps get that nice long edge that will go towards the center of your body whenever you wrap around it, and what you're going to seam into the center. So you continue following this. Go ahead, your choice of blocking first and then seaming, or seaming and then blocking. I did seam by hand just so I can make sure everything lined up very nicely. But that is all that is required to make this wingspan pattern. It's the back side, the front side. When you get a fuller pattern repeat, you get a nice lace effect that coordinates very nicely with the banding. All done in rows, all hand manipulated if you need to. You do have the option for the punch card or the electronic patterning if your machine is capable of that, but follow your machine for instructions. And there you go. I hope you really enjoy this shawl. Getting to know a little bit more of lace and hand transferring creates this beautiful lightweight accessory, perfect for all kinds of occasions. Please be sure to leave me a comment. Let me know if you are using the hand transferring or if you used the machine capabilities. Love to hear from you. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss out on any other tutorials from City Farmhouse Studio. Thanks again. Bye.